mistakes that home victims make that result in having too much dissolved carbon dioxide in the wine?
You know what, that is a really good question. You know, I'm going to slip you $20 afterwards because that's the great question.
I'll take it now.
Like I said, afterwards. The issue with carbon dioxide with clearing, the difference between kit winemaking and commercial winemaking is time. Commercial wines aren't released for a year. So they'll have sat in barrels or storage containers or whatever for a full year before they bottle them and release them. And that gives carbon dioxide enough time to come out of solution, and the wine is completely still and doesn't have any fizz in it. So if you're making wine at home and you're getting it into the bottle in 6, 8, or 10 weeks, you really have to work to make sure there's no carbon dioxide left. You got to get those fizzies out. In order to do that, the very best thing you can do is to pay attention to temperature. Carbon dioxide, under Boyle's law, which governs the behavior of gases, is soluble in a liquid solution in inverse proportion to the temperature of the solution. So colder things are fizzy. And if you pitch your yeast into a cold fermentation, it takes a long time to get going, takes a long time to saturate with gas, takes a long time to finish fermenting. So that means by the time you get around to finding stabilizing day, it's only just finished fermenting 10 minutes ago. It's 100% saturated with gas. It's as fizzy as it's ever going to be, and you're going to try and stir it to get the gas out. So you have to pitch where we say, which is 72 to 75 Fahrenheit. What that instruction actually means is please do 75 Fahrenheit. We try to allow some latitude and flexibility, but we really mean 75 degrees Fahrenheit before the yeast ever touches the must. And 75 all the way until bottling day. All the way through to the end. Because the faster you get that fermentation going, the faster it will finish and begin gassing out on its own. So by the time you get to finding a stabilizing day, you've already got 90% of the gas gone. The carbon dioxide is soluble in inverse proportion to the temperature of a liquid solution. So the warmer you keep it, the more it'll outgas on its own. So think of 2 cans of soda pop. One's in the back window of a car on a hot day, another one's buried in ice. Open them both at the same time. One buried in ice will barely make a hiss, but when you drink it, it'll be completely fizzy. The hot one will gush and foam and be completely flat. Same thing with the wine. You keep it warm all the way through, stir it warm, gas gets out, you're way ahead of the game.
It doesn't affect the alcohol content?
It doesn't affect the alcohol content, doesn't affect the flavor, doesn't affect the aroma. Fermentations, see, everyone's read or heard someone say, oh, it's cold fermented so it's better. It's cold fermented so it's fruitier. Nonsense. Commercial wine fermentations are allowed to run up to 100, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. For commercial wines. It helps with color extraction and aroma stability. So cold fermentations are not an advantage. You want to pitch at 75, you want to keep it at 75 all the way through to bottling day.
Any harm from going over 75?
You know, there's a kind of a break even. If you go above 80, that's okay. But by the time you start getting up around 85, even a little higher, you're looking at the potential for malignant hyperthermia, which is where, because as yeast work, they make heat, just like human beings. You work hard, you get hot and sweaty. Yeast do the same thing. If you start them off really hot, they work faster. The faster they work, the hotter they get. The hotter they get, the faster they work, la 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 la, until you hit about 102, 103 Fahrenheit, depending on the configuration and the volume of your vessel. Then suddenly it'll spike to about 107 and all your yeast will die. So you want to keep it, 75, 80, okay. If it spikes up to 80, you're fine. You might get away with it, even 85, 75. Yeah.
Just one other question. You talk about legs and wine and so on and so forth, and I've noticed really cheap wine.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of legs.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've never seen in Winexpert kits is the wine with what I would call legs.
Mm-hmm.
Any particular reason for that?
Well, is there any particular reason? Well, we have to go back to your assumptions about legs and what they mean. Legs in a wine, everyone know what that means? When you swirl a wine, you see these strips or tears running on the inside. That is an expression of something called the Marangoni effect. And the Marangoni effect is when you mix two solutions of differing viscosities, they will tend to separate out. When you run them over a thin sheet or film, they will tend to separate out into layers. So one will be a thicker layer over here of water, separated by a boundary layer of thinner, flatter alcohol. It's a demonstration of differential viscosity. It has nothing to do with quality, has nothing to do with body, has nothing to do with flavor, it has nothing to do with aroma. It's a principle of physics. And that's all.
So it doesn't make it mean it's...
Doesn't mean anything.
You said it's a measure of acidity?
No. It's a principle of physics. So it's got absolutely nothing to do with wine quality. It's just, if you see that, look, it's the next time you're at a wine tasting and someone says, this has good legs, yes, it is in fact a demonstration of the Marangoni effect. And nothing else. So, there you are. Did you have another question?
I did. And I think maybe that you answered it earlier in one of your other answers. I was going to ask, is the time critical for the time, when the last stage where it says bottle in at 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever? If you're busy, if you're
Okay.
out of town, if whatever, can you leave that?
So the question, for those who didn't hear, is stretching the instructions at the end. When it says bottle it, do you have to bottle it right away? You can leave it sitting in a carboy for another month, but you're going to have that headspace we talked about. So if you leave it more than a month, you're starting to get into an issue where the ullage, the headspace, is going to influence oxidation. So if you're going to leave it for more than an extra month, you are now obligated to rack it off the lees and top it up or rack it into a smaller carboy. But you can put off bottling indefinitely. If the wine is stable, clear, and ready to bottle, take the bung and airlock out and replace it with a solid bung, and get it down tight. And the way to get a solid bung in really tight is to make sure the bung is sanitized and completely dry, and the inside neck of the carboy is completely dry, like bone dry with a paper towel dry. Insert it as deeply as you can, and then twist it sharply a half turn. That'll heat up the bung temporarily, and it'll seat in there. It'll cinch right in. And that's how you get it to seat. Then you can leave it, as long as you've added the extra sulfite that we talked about in the instructions, you leave it 6 months before you bottle it. Top it right up, though. Right up.
Right up to the bottom.
Right up to the bottom of the bung, right? A little space. You know what? Anyone thirsty?